All right, so the first one, first of all, the website we're looking at here is UTXO.live. This is made by a good friend of mine, Steve Jeffress, and he's done some really phenomenal work here. So the way that this is being populated is literally just running a full node and then interpreting, the UTXO set in a particular way here. So the first graphic, this is the current UTXO set as of today at the most recent block approximately. So what we're looking at here is, in the metaphor of the wallet, right? There are about 190 million UTXOs that exist today in the Bitcoin network. And if you were to go through and count all those 190 million UTXOs, they would add up to, about 20 million Bitcoin, which is how many exist today. So quite literally, we're looking at the entire, auditable universe of Bitcoin that exists in the form of UTXOs right now. So I'll highlight a couple different things here. For instance, we look back here at the 2009-10 timeframe. This line here at 50 Bitcoin, these are the Satoshi's UTXOs, right? So each one of these is 50. This is a log scale, so this is 50 Bitcoin each, right? So none of those UTXOs have ever moved. If one of those UTXOs moved from 50 Bitcoin, it would now, that little dot would disappear and it would reappear somewhere on the present day chart for whatever increment it was spent in. So think about this as this is the last time that these Bitcoin have been moved, right? So you see that there are a lot of Bitcoin that get moved on a daily basis, but a lot of them just haven't moved in many years, going back to 29, 10, 11, 12, 13, right? And a lot of these probably never will. Some of these small ones, are economically unspendable down here as well. So one small thing before we go on is one thing that you'll obviously notice here are these kind of co-parallel lines. What these are people sending Bitcoin in USD denominations, right? And these are people sending at, $1, $10, $50, $100, $1,000 dollar increments. And the lines slope downwards because, say this is $100, it takes less Bitcoin to send $100 than it used to. So the line slopes down, right? And one really fun thing that we've done with this data and this kind of new understanding is we've written some Python to make it to where you just running a Bitcoin full node can come up with the approximate price of Bitcoin at any point in the past, basically. So it's actually exceptionally accurate within about 1% of the quoted exchange price. And it's a really unique and fun way to look at it. You can actually access this on the website. It's called UTX Oracle. It's just the top thing here, Oracle. And you can download the Python and run it yourself alongside your full node. It's actually quite easy to do if you're interested. So any questions on that one before I move to the other graphics?
Yeah. So one of my question is actually about the Satoshi. Can we go back? Can you zoom back over to the?
Oh yeah, so the Satoshi era.
Yeah.
Sure.
So what am I looking at? Exactly what am I looking at? That's dust. Like just break down what exactly that line is. Yeah.
Yeah. So this kind of bright orange line here, this is every block. So we're currently on block 870,000 or so. So think about this. There's 870 vertical lines here, and on each of those vertical lines are each of the UTXOs that were spent at that time, right? So this is when Satoshi mined, each of the blocks that he was mining and got 50 Bitcoin right back in that era for their block reward. If those coins had been spent, they would, you start to see some gaps here. I don't know if you can really see, it's so small.
Yeah.
But there's some gaps here. These are people who have spent their Coinbase rewards, and now those are somewhere else on the graph, right? But the fact that these are still here means they have not been moved since they were mined back in 29, 2010. So like that's a good visual representation that we know that those coins have never moved. and that Satoshi just mined them and then didn't move them.
So going back to the analogy of the convenience store,
Yep.
that's where Satoshi was given a couple $100 bills, or right, more than a couple $100 bills, but he has all that Bitcoin, and he's never. We know the Bitcoin has never been spent because basically it's never been divided, right? Something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. If he had spent, so when Satoshi mines a block, gets a 50 Bitcoin Coinbase reward, if that had transacted, obviously you could be able to look up the transaction, but the way that Bitcoin stores the UTXO set, it's the set of unspent transactions, and that 50 Bitcoin is still in the set of unspent transactions because it hasn't been spent and replaced by another one or more UTXOs after being spent.
Well, as a Bitcoiner, I hope if I go on to UTXO.live, I never see those move. That is great. Um, that was my question on this one, and then I guess the last thing is, I mean, I'm gonna have a lot of questions, so hopefully bear with me. But on where you were talking about, if we go over to the other, they kind of look like heartbeats that were all in rhythm. Can you just speak a little bit more on that again? Because I just think when you see that pattern visually, and please, if you're listening to some podcast, you need to get on YouTube and see this because this is pretty impressive. Break down why it repeats, and why it's in a wave.
Yeah, yeah. So two of the things you'll see here. One, there are straight, you know, horizontal lines, right? That's
Yep.
someone sending at 1 Bitcoin, at 0.01, at 0.001, and that makes sense, right? Sometimes people send in round Bitcoin increments of different denominations. The wavy lines are different dollar denominated sends, right? So if I were going to send my cousin
Gotcha.
$100 of Bitcoin from my wallet, I would open my wallet, calculate how much 100 Bitcoin is, and then send it to him,
Okay.
right? That would, say I did this a couple of years ago, that would show as a certain UTXO size, right, on that particular day. And because of the way that the world works, thousands of people doing the same exact thing, you get this signal in the UTXO data of a lot of people sending at these round dollar numbers on a daily basis. And because of the way that this is set up, you see those track day to day in the relative size differences that equate to dollar amounts, and you get to see this chart, sort of the inverse price chart, because it takes less Bitcoin, you know, to send $100 than it used to, which
Okay.
is it's really a pretty an amazing thing.
It almost goes back to your original thought on Bitcoin, that is this replacing credit card companies, right? And the fees. Um, so the perfect horizontals are just denominated in Bitcoin, and when they're not, it's because they're denominated in fiat at that moment, and that's why they almost look like they're in lockstep.
Yeah, and I'm using dollars as an example just because we've looked at the data pretty closely, and like
Mhm.
if you try to look up the euro signal or the pound signal, there's not enough activity in those to see a real signal, but the dollar definitely has a this. So I think it's really only the dollar signal that you're seeing here. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yes, please, let's go on to the next tab and the next visual.
cool. So the next one we're going to look at, this is an example of so take a single day. This is the day for May 8th, 2024, and there are call it 250,000 transactions that happen on that day. This is a representation of where those 250,000 transactions came from. So they were all spent on May 8th, but the last time they were spent was this chart. So some of them were spent, 2013, not very many in 2013, a little 2014, and then a lot of these are just getting churned over and over again for some economic use that you got something last week and now you're moving it again. So that's that really bright, sunspot looking thing. So this is an example of a pretty average day where nothing really strikes you. It's a pretty normal distribution of things, and there's not many things in the history um, that really stand out to you as really meaningful. Um, good on this one.
Yeah, it's great.
So that's
100.
an example standard day. Um, this one is a little bit different here. You see, this mid 2013 section clearly stands out for a couple of reasons. One is, this is not a random distribution, right? They're all on this basically same day, where these coins, and this is from September 6th. So on September 6th, some entity or person or something, moved a lot of coins that are actually really small denomination that were last moved in early 2013. So, I mean, the Bitcoin blockchain is just a gold mine of interesting analytics, right? The fact that you can just see all these things happening and make some inferences of it is really, it's very fun from a data perspective. So I'd encourage people to just explore the thing. But this is what I would call an example of kind of like a hodler. This is someone who, we don't know exactly what it is, but it's someone who had a lot of UTXOs that were created, around the same time. This is not a single day, but this is a small period, right? A month or so. And then they spent all of these on the same day in September of this year, right? So they're consolidating or doing something with all those back from this other period. So this is kind of like the hodler example. Um, the third example is from a miner's perspective. So comparing this one, this is September 1st of this year. You obviously see something that stands out being different here, right? There's this long, multi-year, um, uh, kind of rectangle that shows in the data, and this is, can't say certainly, but like very highly likely a miner, right? This is someone who gets payouts in, relatively small denominations. They started here and they've kept, doing whatever operation they're doing up until essentially the present day, and now they're moving all of these. This is probably, tens of thousands of UTXOs in this rectangle here. So they're moving all of those on September 1st, and reconsolidating those probably in some bigger, bigger UTXOs. So you might combine these 10,000 UTXOs into, 3 or 4 or 20 small, like larger denominations. So this is a good example of what it would look like on chain from a large miner that's running a consolidation of many small, payouts that happened over a multi-year period.
So, staying with this image, because obviously our audience is the Bitcoin mining industry, talk to me. And I love the forensics you've done, because basically you're able to look back at the data and be like, this vertical one is a hodler. This horizontal one is likely a miner. If a miner, talk to me about a use case you guys see a lot with mining that sFox is totally prepared to support and to help miners with. Is it something like this? Like, hey, we need help, consolidating all our UTXOs because of X, Y, and Z. What does it look like? And what are the, uh, I don't know if you want to use this as an example and kind of build off this in a hypothetical, or use a real world example. But please, like, what is it that miners should know about the UTXOs, and where is the value add and the reason why miners need to come to sFox?
Yeah, sure. On the data point, I totally agree with you. Steve did such a fantastic job making this website and helping me pull these examples, to show these things that, it's really nice to be able to see something related to Bitcoin instead of just reading about it or talking about it. So this would almost certainly be someone who is, signed up on a pool. They're getting their periodic distributions, and they're getting those just straight into cold storage, and then they're consolidating from cold storage either to an exchange or to an upgraded, custody setup. So one of the nice things from the sFox perspective is we don't regularly have miners, depositing directly to their exchange account, from directly from a pool. Theoretically, that would be okay to do, but we don't see it happen all that frequently. So from a miner's perspective, the main thing to think about is making sure that you are setting your minimum payout to be economically viable, right? So you don't want to be getting these $5 UTXOs, right? You also don't need to, I would say, to optimize for your use case. So for example, if you know you're not going to be needing to sell much or any of your Bitcoin that you're actively mining, and you can pay for electricity and other expenses from other source of income or savings, I would say to make your UTXOs a bit larger and to do less frequent withdrawals or payouts from your pool, just to make your life a little bit easier on the back end when you're consolidating or spending in the future. That is very important.